Hello, everyone. My name is KR Liu. I've been a lifelong advocate for people with hearing loss. I've had severe hearing loss since I was 3 years old, but I've also been a technology executive for the last 20 years. I'm going to tell you a story that started 10 years ago. I was sitting in my office, and one day I was on a phone call, and all of a sudden my hearing aid stopped working, and I couldn't take the call, and I panicked. And so I had to hang up the phone, walk over to my boss, and I said, I have an emergency, I need to leave the office, and I'll be back in a couple of hours. And my boss did not know that I had a hearing loss. I worked very hard to conceal that because I was worried about how it would impact my job or how people may look at me if I had a hearing loss, may treat me differently. So I went to my audiologist office and said, my hearing aid broke, I desperately need a new hearing aid or a replacement or a loaner. And they said, well, your hearing aid's about 10 years old, we can't fix it. So it's going to cost you about $3,500 to replace it. I'm 28 years old, and I don't have that kind of money. So I said, well, I'll just put myself in debt because I desperately need this piece of technology in order to function. So I gave them my credit card, I purchased a new hearing aid, they said, I'll be here in 2 weeks. I went to my car and I cried my eyes out. And I said, this has to change. This cannot be that this is Silicon Valley and we have such innovation in technology that could help change people's lives and help them hear better, yet it costs thousands of dollars and is completely inaccessible for most people. How am I going to do that? I have no idea. So I go back to work and my CEO sees me and she says, are you okay? And I said, no, not really. She pulls me into her office and I tell her, I said, I just had to give away most of my savings, put myself in debt, buy a hearing aid so I can function. And I tell her all about the struggles I've had throughout my life. She said, you need to go change that. And I said, how am I going to change that? I'm just some 28-year-old girl. What am I going to do? She said, you need to talk to anybody that will listen. Any technology company, any advocacy group. You need to go out there and make your voice heard, tell your story. And so over the next 10 years, I would do that. I ended up advocating on the Hearing Loss Association of America, the Consumer Technology Association, anyone that would hear me. And then 2 years ago, I got a phone call from a company called Doppler Labs, which makes a wireless earbud augmentation product. They said, we launched this product on Kickstarter, and we launched it as a music curation product to allow people to control how they hear the world. And people are writing us, asking us if they can use this to control how they hear the world. And we know nothing about that, so we want to talk to you. So I go to the company, and they showed me the technology, and I said, do you understand for what you have here is going to change millions of lives, but because many of us need access to technology to hear. And it costs thousands of dollars, and the product you have here is a couple of $100s. And they said, well, what would you do? I said, well, first you have to change regulation, because right now you're not a medical device, so you can't sell to somebody who has hearing loss. So that makes it really difficult. They said, well, what if you change regulation? I said, how am I going to change regulation? So ironically enough, a year later, I am speaking at the FDA about why accessibility is important for people with hearing loss and why the market needs to change. For those of you that don't know, 6 companies own 98% of the hearing aid market, and that hasn't changed in 50 years. An average hearing aid costs anywhere from $2,500 to $5,000 a piece and are not covered by insurance. So I was speaking at this FDA panel, and then I got invited to speak at the White House on Election Day, which was really awkward and uncomfortable, but anyways, I was speaking about why it's important to change the social stigma around hearing loss, why it's important for technology industry and the disability community to come together and change how we build products for people who may live their life differently, have different abilities. But what I didn't know is there was someone sitting in that audience that was going to change my life and change the entire course of how we access hearing technology. A week later, I get an email from Senator Elizabeth Warren. She said, my staff was in the audience listening to you speak at the White House and saw how much passion you had about wanting to make this change happen. And so she said, we're about to launch new legislation to make hearing devices more accessible for people who need it. So would you be willing to come to Washington, D.C. and lobby for us? I was like, yes, of course. And so I went to Capitol Hill and I met with 15 different Congress members, and I spent the next 6 months lobbying for this new legislation that would be called the Over-the-Counter Hearing Aid Act of 2017, which means that hearing devices for people who have mild to moderate hearing loss would be able to be sold over the counter without a prescription, so somebody can buy it for a few $100s, take it home, set it up, and see if it helps them hear. And it was a really, really uphill battle because, not always bipartisanship these days, but I met with every single senator who would listen to me. And the bill went to the House and passed the House. That was in July. And then it went to the Senate, and it passed the Senate at the end of July. And it was signed into law on August 18th, 2017. So when that happened, on that day, I was like, I can't believe if I look back 10 years ago to that conversation where my CEO said to me, if you just raise your voice loud enough, you never know what can happen. You never know what kind of impact and change you can have. And now my company, that ended up launching as a music company, has now completely shifted as a hearing technology company because one person stood up and said, I have a better idea of how this product can become a need and change millions of lives, as opposed to something that's cool to have. So it's really important that people think about the disability community because we are so full of ideas and energy, and we create opportunity because we look at the world differently, we think differently, and we don't take certain senses for granted. And it's really interesting to see that there isn't that many engineers out there building products for people with disabilities. The product my company makes, I'm the only person who has a hearing loss in the entire company. So they come to me and ask me, well, what features should we put in there? How should we design this? I'm like, hire people who live the problem you're trying to solve. There's talented engineers out there. Because when you design for disability, you do design for everyone. I really think that's really important. But for me, I never thought that having my hearing loss was going to serve me later in life. It was not easy being someone who had a hearing loss. You grow up, you're bullied, you're picked on, you're left out of a lot of social situations. I can tell you many stories about that. You're not able to take certain jobs because the environments make it impossible for you to work in. So I'm hoping that my story inspires companies to think differently, to think that the people that are living with different abilities, they're super talented and creative and imaginative and can create opportunities for companies to do so many wonderful things for millions of people and change their lives. So I just want to thank you all for hearing my story, and I hope it inspires you.